You think claiming that place makes you someone? It's a shell just like you. The words stung deeper than she'd expected. But that night when the glass shattered and boots dragged mud across the floor, Mara knew it was never just about the hotel. They wanted her silence. What she found upstairs wasn't just forgotten art. It was something people would lie for, threaten for, and maybe destroy for. Before we dive in, let me know, what time are you listening to this and where are you? Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. Mara wiped her hands on a rag that had long turned gray from grease. The smell of metal clung to her sleeves. Behind her, the grinder buzzed steady as breathing, while an old radio murmured about the city tearing down another abandoned block on the east side. The foreman slid a thin envelope across the table without looking up. If there's work next week, I'll call. Her truck waited under a film of dust, the driver's seat patched with duct tape. She sat for a moment before turning the key fingers rough and blackened around the nails. On the dashboard, a small photo curled at the edges, her and June sitting on a borrowed couch, both smiling too hard for the camera. By late afternoon, she climbed the narrow stairs to their apartment above the liquor store. The hallway smelled of beer and wet cardboard. June sat at the table, pencil in hand, tongue pressed between her teeth as she wrote spelling words. Steam burst from a pot left too long on the stove. Mara turned off the burner and leaned on the counter until her shoulders eased. June looked up. "Mom, when are we getting our own house?" "One day," she said, brushing a curl from the girl's forehead. "When the timing's right." When the lights dimmed for the night, a gust pushed something against the frame, a folded flyer caught on the rusted screen. She pulled it free. Public auction. Grand Ashbourne Hotel. Starting bid $5,000. The paper was damp at the edges. She ran her thumb along the print until the ink smudged her mind, circling that number as if it might change. Rain drifted down in thin, steady lines as Mara eased her old truck into a space across from Ashbourne City Hall. Her reflection in the glass door looked tired, hair tied back under a frayed cap jacket darkened from the damp. A young man behind the counter lifted his eyes just enough to acknowledge her. "I'm here for the surplus housing sale," she said, sliding the form forward. He scanned it quickly, typing without much interest. "Unit 3C's off the list. Buyer came in yesterday. Paid in full?" She waited, unsure if he might offer another option. He didn't. The keyboard clicked once more before he said, "Next one opens for bids in spring." Mara folded the form back into her bag and turned toward the meeting hall down the corridor. The double doors led to a long, low-ceilinged room that smelled faintly of paper and burnt coffee. A portable heater rattled in the corner. About a dozen people sat scattered among the folding chairs. She sat near the back envelope in her lap, trying to quiet the pulse in her thumb. The auctioneer, a man in a blue blazer, gone shiny at the elbows, adjusted the microphone. "Next property," he said, glancing at a sheet. "Parcel 41A, Grand Ashbourne Hotel. Minimum bid $5,000. A chuckle rose from the right side of the room. "That old ruin," someone muttered. Another added, "You couldn't pay me to sleep there." The auctioneer looked around hopefully. Any interest? On the wall behind him, a projector displayed a faded photo. The hotel stood half swallowed by vines, a few windows boarded, others open like missing teeth. The image flickered once, then steadied. Mara knew that building. Everyone in Ashbourne did. It had been empty her entire life, a place kids dared each other to enter. But through the decay, she saw something else, bricks still holding corners. Square the frame of a place that hadn't yet given up. The auctioneer called again. 5,000 going once. No one moved. Chairs creaked. A man yawned loudly. She opened the envelope, counting quietly under her breath. 4812. It wasn't enough. She thought of the furnace repair bill waiting at home, of the note from the landlord about raising rent, of June's question from last night. "When will we have our own house?" 4812, she said. The words left her mouth before she realized she'd spoken them. Heads turned. Someone near the front laughed. "Not enough, sweetheart." The auctioneer hesitated. "Ma'am, the minimum is—" "I know," she said, her voice calm but thin. "It's what I have." The man in the blazer looked to the city clerk, who shrugged. After a pause that felt longer than it was, he lifted the gavel. "If there are no other bids—" He let the words hang. Nobody answered. The gavel came down. "Sold." Someone muttered, "She'll regret that." Another replied, "Maybe she already does." Mara gathered the documents, slid them into the same envelope, and nodded to the clerk. The man barely looked up. From where she stood, she could just make out the faint outline of the Grand Ashbourne Hotel far down the hill, a gray mass behind the church steeple. The sight steadied her, though she didn't know why. Maybe because it looked worse than her life and still stood upright. The drive home was quiet. The heater blew lukewarm air that smelled faintly of rubber. She turned the radio on low, more for company than news. At the stoplight near Main Street, she glanced again at the papers beside her. Owner Mara Ellis. It looked strange in print, like a name attached to someone else. By the time she reached their building, the sky had settled into that dull color it took before evening. The liquor store downstairs was already busy. Voices drifted up through the floorboards. June sat cross-legged on the floor, sketching small houses across a page. The room smelled faintly of damp plaster. Mara hung her jacket on the chair, laid the envelope on the table, and turned off the pot simmering on the stove. June looked up. "Did you find the apartment, Mom?" "Not that one," she said. "But I got something." "What kind of something, old?" "Needs work. But it has a roof." June blinked, uncertain if that was good news. "So it's ours." "For now," Mara said, and smiled in a way that didn't quite reach her eyes. She opened the cupboard, found 2 cups, filled them from the tap, and handed one to her daughter. They drank. Standing by the sink, there wasn't room for 2 chairs. June giggled when water spilled over her hand. Mara watched her for a moment. Through the haze, the outline of the hotel stood gray, still like it had been waiting. She took a slow breath and whispered something too quiet to catch maybe just the beginning of a thought. They drove with the windows up. The road curved through damp trees. In the passenger seat, June counted mailboxes until there weren't any left. At the edge of town, gravel replaced pavement. The hotel stood at the end roof, slanted chimneys, crooked ivy covering most of the sign. Only 5 letters remained: Ashbourne. Mara stopped the engine and rested her hands on the wheel. The quiet that followed seemed unfamiliar. June leaned forward. "Is this really it?" "It is," Mara said. "Our new start." The girl squinted at the building. "It looks tired." "So am I," she muttered, getting out. They pushed the gate open together. The lock gave with a snap, hinges stiff. Weeds brushed their jean steps slick with moss. Mara steadied herself by holding June's hand. The brass door handle left a green stain on her palm. "It used to be beautiful," she murmured. The floor rippled from water damage, but the boards didn't give underfoot. She stepped behind the front desk and rummaged through drawers, only old receipts. June followed quietly, her shoes marking the dust. "Can we live here?" she asked. "For now," Mara said. "We can sleep here tonight." In the office, they cleared a corner, laid out a blanket, lit the camping stove. The bread was dry, the water warm, but it was food. Mara returned to town for supplies. The hardware store was quiet. A man behind the counter looked up. "Need something fixed?" "Everything," she said, handing him a list. He glanced at the address, paused. "That place, people say it's haunted. Someone died upstairs. They shut it down after." "I'm not scared of stories." "Maybe you should be." He added a flashlight sealant tarp. "You'll need more than nerve to hold that place up." She paid in cash. He didn't say goodbye. Back at the property, she saw a man across the road. Gray coat, small camera. He wasn't hiding. When she walked toward him, he lowered the lens. "Daniel Mercer," he said. "I document historic buildings." She adjusted the strap on her bag. "It's not gone yet." "Good. Mind if I take a few more shots?" "Stay on the road." Of course. By the time she brought the supplies in, he was gone. June had drawn the hotel on the back of a takeout menu, dozens of yellow squares, glowing beneath a penciled moon. "That's optimistic," Mara said. "It'll look like that when we fix it." She didn't reply, picked up an old broom and swept. Dust rose, settled again. Beneath it, bits of the original tile showed through. She pictured the lobby once full, then let the thought fade. Later, she locked the door and unrolled their sleeping bags side by side. "Will we stay here long?" June asked. "Until we can't." The girl turned toward the wall, breathing steady. Mara stayed awake, tracing the faint outlines water had left on the ceiling. Morning came with more debris. She dragged another beam into the yard, gloves, stiff arms sore. Each room demanded something new, sweeping, scraping, pulling tiles by hand. The place didn't look better, just less broken. Cars slowed as they passed. Some drivers glanced over, then kept going. One man rolled down his side panel halfway but said nothing. The third floor drained her most. Wallpaper peeled like burnt skin, and the carpet stank no matter how much baking soda she dumped on it. Behind a tall cabinet at the east end, she spotted something odd, a narrow stairwell, metal steps rising steeply into shadow. She climbed halfway. The door at the top was chained with rusted links and a heavy padlock. No light leaked through the crack underneath. Back in the office, she checked the building permit again, 5 floors. She unfolded a faded map from a drawer. Same. Lobby, guest rooms, utility closets. No mention of more stairs. That night, June curled up with a book on constellations. Mara stared at the camp stove. "There's a locked room upstairs," she said. "Maybe it was the owner's," June replied without looking up. "Maybe." The kettle whistled. June turned a page. Sometimes the best parts aren't on the map. The next morning, Mara stopped at the hardware store for paint and hinges. The man behind the counter gave a nod and started ringing her up. When he saw the address on her permit, he muttered, "Watch yourself. People say someone disappeared in that place." She waited. "Who?" she asked. He shrugged. "Don't know. Just old talk. Back when I was your kid's age." The afternoon went to sealing cracks along the stairwell wall. Later, the old records spread across the desk. Leonard Voss, owner from 64 to 83. No sale after that. A weak signal on the phone brought up one short note from 1983. Local businessman Leonard Voss has not been seen in over a week. Police continue to investigate. Nothing more. The phone slipped from her hand onto the desk, a splinter pricking her palm. She rose, pacing the halls, counting landings, pressing an ear to the walls. The place was always a little wrong. Walls too thick, echoes landing in odd corners. June fell asleep early. Permits and tax files stayed open under the lamp, most stamped and forgotten since 1985. A sharp pop from the hallway broke the stillness. The ceiling light flickered, buzzed, then went out. The flashlight beam steadied in her grip. A few seconds later, the bulb blinked back on. Dust drifted from the ceiling above the desk, just a few grains falling from one spot. 2 panels didn't quite meet a thin gap tracing the plaster line, exactly where the hidden stairway would end. Her notebook lay open to the sketch, 5 floors, nothing higher. Yet dust never falls from nowhere. At the coffee shop, someone had pinned a sketch of the hotel to the board. Just a crooked outline and the word "haunted" in black marker. Mara tore it down without comment and shoved it into her coat. By the time she reached the counter, the women behind her were already whispering. One gave a short laugh. The barista rang her up without a word, eyes fixed on the register. Mara took a corner seat, elbows close, cup in hand. Across the room, a man in a gray suit walked in, scanned the tables, and came straight to her. "I thought I'd catch you here," he said, setting his briefcase down before she answered. "Elliot Graves, Township Legal Office." She nodded. He pulled a folded document from his pocket. "That hotel, Grand Ashbourne, has title issues, zoning problems, maybe even preservation conflicts." His voice was calm, almost friendly. "If it's too much, I know someone willing to buy." Her fingers tightened around the cup. "I'm not selling, of course." He slid the paper across the table. "Best to step away early before someone else's mess becomes yours." "I'm not stepping away." He gave a brief nod and left, not waiting for her to touch the paper. 2 days later, a letter arrived, official seal-thick paper. A notice of incomplete transfer filled with half phrases: ownership under review, pending verification, not legally binding. Mara drove to the municipal office. At the desk, a young clerk shifted in his chair. "You'll need to speak with Mr. Graves. He handles that district." "I did," she said. "Now I want an answer." He slid a business card across the counter. "He's not in today." She waited a second, then turned and left. Back at the cafe, the eyes followed her. Someone near the window leaned to a friend, whispering, "She bought that wreck, probably turning it into a ghost motel." A few chuckles rose quick and sharp. The barista said nothing. Mara kept her gaze on her tea. The cup bent slightly under her grip. When the noise faded, she stood and walked out. That night, June sat on the cot. "Are they mad at us? They don't matter. Do you think they're right?" "No." The word came late, softer than she meant. While wiping down the back hall, a cold draft brushed her sleeve. The rear door shifted with the wind unlatched. The metal around the lock was scratched, thin new lines catching the light. She pushed it shut, wedged a broken chair under the handle, then moved through each floor again. Room by room, everything remained, yet the stillness felt rearranged like someone had passed through quietly and left the air unsettled. Every search brought her back to one name, Elliot Graves, appearing on committees, funding boards, property filings. Always present, never in charge. By morning, the tea beside her had cooled. June stirred, rubbing her eyes. Mara stood to make oatmeal, then stopped, staring at the circled mark on the building map, the small rear door she couldn't forget. The chain resisted screeching before the cutter snapped it clean. Metal hit the floor. She leaned in, shoulder against the door until it gave. A stairway wound upward, steep and unnaturally clean. Each step echoed, but no dust lifted. No cobwebs clung. It wasn't neglect she walked through, it was upkeep. At the top, another door waited, thick, unmarked. A rug lay bunched at its base as if someone had once tried to seal the gap. Her fingers paused on the handle, then turned it. The corridor beyond looked wrong for this building. Wide, quiet carpet, soft underfoot. The paneling was aged but unscathed, brass fittings dulled yet steady. She crossed the room to a desk in the corner. On it lay an open letter paper, browned at the edges, corners curled. It looked as though it had been wading through years of dust, through everyone's, forgetting for a pair of hands to finally turn it over. Her eyes traced the first line. To whomever finds this, I never intended to keep them. But once I had them, I couldn't let them go. These pieces, they were stolen, yes, but they belonged to history, and I feared they would vanish again if returned. The signature at the bottom stopped her breath. Leonard Voss. She'd read the name in town records. The last registered owner before the hotel shut down. Reported missing in 1983. No known heirs. Just disappeared. She looked at the canvas, leaned against the wall edges, worn but preserved, protected. Her thumb brushed over the name at the end of the letter. A stolen collection, post-war European art, hidden in plain sight. Not just a rumor then, not just ghost stories from an old man at the hardware store. Mom June's voice called up from below, bouncing up the stairwell. Mom, where are you? I'm just looking at a room, she said, folding the letter quickly. She went back down the stairs without hurrying. At the landing, she eased the door closed and waited, steadying her breath. What filled her chest wasn't fear, not quite, just a weight she hadn't known how to name. In the main hall, June sat cross-legged on a drop cloth, coloring with a stub of crayon. I drew the hotel, she said, grinning. It looks like a castle. Mara sat beside her, nodding. Her hand stayed cold. The letter rustled in her pocket. She pressed it deeper, unsure whether to read it again or never at all. While June washed at the sink they'd fixed from old pipes, Mara checked the desk again. Under the drawer liner, a second envelope, names, paintings, ports, faint codes. Nothing familiar. She put it back and closed the drawer. Rain hit the roof hard that night. June slept easily. Mara sat at the table, tea cooling in her hand, the letter spread open again. Someone had hidden it upstairs for 40 years. A creak sounded behind the wall. She didn't move, just kept reading line by line. Later, she locked the letter in a tin beneath her cot. Told no one. Not Daniel, not June. Some mornings, she almost convinced herself she'd imagined it. The days filled with work. She cut weeds, painted the front doors, patched leaks the best she could. June played with the kids across the street, her voice echoing through the halls. One morning, while Mara struggled with a window stuck in its frame, Daniel Mercer appeared again. Same gray jacket, dust on the sleeves. Checking if the place is still standing, he said, holding up a small moisture meter. She frowned. You carry that everywhere. Comes with the job. Preservation Trust. Old buildings, forgotten ones. She stepped aside to let him in. He moved quietly through the corridors, tapping on walls, jotting notes in a worn notebook. They spoke little until he paused near the stairwell. You planning to open this back to the public, he asked. Someday, she said, if it holds. They ate lunch behind the hotel, sitting on the patch of grass that passed for a garden. June's hands were sticky with peanut butter. She offered Daniel half her sandwich, earnest and certain he'd want it. He took a bite and thanked her. He told them about his father, a boy who fled Germany, ended up in Chicago, then here. He never spoke much about the war, Daniel said. Just said some things aren't buried, only misplaced. Mara watched June balancing along the curb, hair lifting in the wind. That afternoon they stopped at the park. June chased pigeons while Mara and Daniel sat under the trees. Her shoulders loosened. Her breath evened. It wasn't peace, but close enough. Walking back, they talked about repairs, the roof tiles she couldn't reach, the heater that refused to start. Daniel offered to bring a ladder. She didn't refuse. At the gate, the light was fading. June ran ahead, kicking through leaves. Mara unlocked the door, then froze. Muddy prints stretched from the side entrance across the tiles. Her boots were clean. Daniel's sneakers were dry. The tracks weren't theirs. They stopped near the first step to the sealed floor. "Did someone come by?" Daniel asked. She shook her head. He guided June to the kitchen, talking about washing up. Mara crouched and touched one of the prints, damp, not recent, but not old. She straightened slowly, eyes tracing the stairwell. Nothing moved. She turned off the hall light. An envelope waited by the door. No return address, only her name in block letters. She opened it carefully. A photo of her and June at the gate, words beneath it. "Return it before it's too late. Same clothes as 2 days ago." Someone had been close. She folded the page, checked the locks, then circled the building once. The wrench in her pocket pressed cold against her palm. No footprints, no new marks. Back at the desk, she slid the letter into the drawer. The hotel felt dense with quiet. June was still at the library. The stillness ached behind her eyes. Later at the diner, she waited for her order. 3 men at the front booth talked, low voices threading just above the clatter of plates. She must have found something. "Heard Graves is drawing up papers. They'll take it back." "They always do." A laugh followed, dry, quick, familiar in tone. Mara faced the counter. When her food came, she nodded left without speaking. The hallway smelled faintly of fresh paint. June had fallen asleep at the desk, pencil still in hand. A crayon outline of her palm spread across the page. Mara laid a blanket over her shoulders, the movement small and steady. What if they were right? She'd never owned anything worth taking. Never been near power or danger. The hidden room, the letter, it didn't belong to her world. And whoever sent that photo wanted her to remember that. She pulled the Voss letter from the drawer. The ink had blurred where her thumb had touched it days earlier. She read it again, tracing the last line. Then lifted her phone, took 3 pictures, the signature, the full page, the final paragraph. Her text was short. "You said your father survived the war? I think I've found something connected. Can you look?" She sent it before she could stop herself. The screen flashed, delivered. She set it down. Daniel waited at the back table of the library, hair damp, sleeves creased. Mara sat across from him. He turned the laptop her way without a word. "I found something." He tapped the screen. It showed a museum database, rows of entries, titles, catalog, numbers, names. That name in Voss's ledger, P. Gellhorn. He was a dealer in Vienna during the 1930s. Disappeared in '44. Here's a painting listed under his collection, Madonna at the River. Matches what Voss described in his notes. Size medium, even the signature. Mara leaned in, brow furrowed. "You're saying these are stolen?" "I'm saying some of them might be. Looted during the war. A few of the pieces he mentioned, those weren't just decorative. They were missing from Holocaust-era claims listed in international databases." He opened another tab showing a high-resolution image of a painting. This one was taken from a family in Krakow. The last known owner died in a camp. It's still unrecovered. She swallowed, eyes fixed on the screen. "And it's here. Upstairs. In that room." Daniel nodded. "Or one that looks exactly like it. There's a lot we don't know. But enough to say you're sitting on something bigger than real estate." The chair creaked as she shifted back. Her hands rested on her thighs, tense. "I thought I bought a ruin, not a war crime." Daniel glanced around before lowering his voice. "Be careful. If these works are real, they belong to others, families, museums. Once word spreads, you'll draw more than collectors. Governments, lawyers, people who want a piece. So what should I do?" "You could contact the Holocaust Museum in D.C. They handle cultural property. But once you call them, it's no longer fully yours." Mara studied the open ledger between them. The paper had stiffened with age lines marked in pencil, someone's life tucked away for decades. They left the library together and split at the crosswalk. Near the courthouse, Elliot Graves stood speaking to a reporter, folder tucked neatly under his arm tie, precise as ever. His glance passed her, polite, unreadable. At the hotel gate, Mara paused, wind tugging at her sleeves. The door locked behind her, light thinning across the floorboards. Upstairs, the top floor door hung open. That morning, it had been tied shut. Now the wire lay slack, the frame shifting slightly with each draft. The painting still leaned against the wall. Dust remained undisturbed, desk drawers emptied, the letter gone. Daniel didn't know she'd kept the original, only that there had been notes. Even that trace had vanished. Backing away, she pulled the door closed. It didn't catch. Phone in hand, she called him. One ring, two, three, then his voice. "Someone's been here," she whispered. "The letter's gone. You locked the door." "Yes, then don't stay there tonight. It's already dark. Then don't stay alone." The call ended, no click, no tone. She checked for signal. None. A car idled at the curb, engine low. No headlights. She drew the curtains and locked the inner doors. Overhead, a single board creaked, measured, deliberate. She didn't call out, just waited. At sunrise, 2 news vans arrived, followed by a pair of sedans. Tripods, unfolded cables snaked along the curb. Neighbors gathered with coffee, keeping their distance. Mara stayed on the second-floor landing. June still slept. The knock came hard and steady, echoing through the hall. She didn't answer. By the time she reached the first floor, the crowd had thickened. Elliot stood at the front, calm behind a podium microphone clipped to his lapel. Papers lay neatly beside him. "We have reason to believe this property is harboring unlawfully held materials, artifacts of uncertain origin, potentially linked to stolen cultural property. In coordination with the local council and legal authorities, we are pursuing appropriate channels to secure and investigate said items." Mara let the curtain fall. She dialed Daniel. He picked up quickly. "I saw the feed. Don't go near them. Don't speak to anyone. They're already here. I'm driving over." Someone hit the gate again, harder this time. A woman called out, asking if Mara Ellis would comment. Another voice. "Is it true you're hiding Nazi art?" She opened the door just enough to step out. A young man pushed forward with a recorder. "Ms. Ellis, are you in possession of stolen cultural property?" Her throat tightened. "If it belongs to someone, it doesn't belong to me." He jotted a note and stepped back. That single line would spread online within hours. A text from Daniel, "Stay inside. I'm 10 minutes away." At the grocery store later, conversation stopped when she entered. The cashier avoided her eyes. 2 women by the shelves spoke just loud enough. "She's the one with the paintings. That place should have been left to rot." Her card was declined. She paid cash, left the receipt behind. In the parking lot, a torn notebook page flapped under her wiper. "Thieves get what's coming." She turned on the wipers and drove off. At the auto shop next morning, her boss met her at the gate. "Mara, reporters came here. I can't have that. I've got to let you go for now." She only nodded and walked back to the truck. At the hotel, she printed "No trespassing," authorized entry only, and taped it to the door and gate. Then unplugged lamps, drew curtains, checked locks. June sat on the floor sorting crayons. Mom Mara turned. "Are they going to make us leave?" "Not yet." June leaned into her. Mara wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Dinner passed quiet. Neither mentioned the cars idling down the street. Afterward, Mara waited by the window phone on her knee. Daniel finally texted, "They're pushing hard." She didn't reply. Her hand stayed still on her lap. Glass shattered, sharp, deliberate. Mara was on her feet before thought caught up. She grabbed the flashlight, its metal scraping wood, and moved toward the sound. At the stairs, the side door hung crooked, one pane broken glass scattered across the hall. Someone had come through. She turned fast. June still slept, head tipped off the pillow. Mara crouched beside her. "Up, honey." Quiet. June blinked, half awake, but obeyed. Mara took her hand, steering clear of the squeaky board by the landing. They slipped into the utility closet. The door clicked soft behind them. Footsteps crossed the floor above, steady, deliberate. Boards groaned under heavy boots. Light flickered under the frame, then stilled. Mara pressed her palm against June's shoulder. The child's fingers gripped her jeans. A man's voice cut through. "Start with the foyer. Anything that looks like records or art, she's hiding something." Another voice answered closer. "We'll find it. The board will have what it needs. The place isn't hers anymore." Elliot Graves. Drawers slammed. A chair scraped. They weren't searching, they were taking. A third voice muttered, "Once we have proof, she won't stand a chance in court." June shifted. Mara leaned close. "Don't move." The girl stilled. Noise ebbed, then rose again. Doors, curses, boots on tile. They passed the closet once, close enough to tilt the floor. Then quiet. The front door opened, then slammed. Mara waited, counting heartbeats. When the tires finally crunched over gravel, she eased the door open. The foyer was wrecked, drawers yanked out, papers torn. Mud streaked the tile. The smell of damp earth hung thick. She led June back to bed. The child clung to her sleeve until sleep overtook her. Mara sat at the desk, hands flat on the empty surface. Voss's papers were gone. She didn't cry. Her body had moved past that. She stayed alert, tracing every sound in the wind. By dawn, she'd packed 2 canvas bags. She paused by June's shelf. One of the girl's drawings lay crushed underfoot, the hotel glowing yellow in crayon. Mara smoothed it and tucked it into a notebook. She wrote a note for Daniel, check the upstairs ledger. If I'm gone, tell no one. Fog clung low along the shrubs outside. She unlatched the gate and stopped. Across the brick wall, a single word, thief. Red paint still wet enough to drip. Her grip tightened around the keys. No movement on the street. Whoever had done it was long gone. Behind her, June's voice broke the quiet. Mom. Go inside, sweetheart. Mara stared at the wall. The word didn't sting, it confirmed what others had already decided. She exhaled once, long and thin, then shut the door. Rain soaked her sleeve as she pressed the doorbell. The porch smelled of rust and wet leaves. Daniel answered after a pause, eyes hollow, voice low. I've been summoned. The county board wants a statement tomorrow. Mara didn't respond immediately. She waited for more and he gave it. Someone reported me. Said I've been helping you hide stolen property. Her chest tightened. Who? He leaned against the doorframe. No name. Could be anonymous, but I have a guess. His expression shifted, something uncertain passing through it. I used to work with Elliot years ago. Fundraising and historical preservation grants. We split over a philosophical difference. You think he's retaliating? Daniel shrugged. Timing's convenient, isn't it? She followed him in. The house smelled of dry wood and stale coffee. Everything was ordered, maps on corkboards, papers stacked neatly. On the kitchen table lay a newspaper, folded open to her photo, The Woman Keeping War Treasures. She drew it closer. Half the quotes were twisted. Some weren't hers at all. Daniel paced once, then stopped by the sink. I told them you weren't hiding anything, that you found the collection by accident. But headlines like that don't die easy. You think I should quit? I didn't say that. Then what are you saying? He met her eyes. I follow truth, Mara. That's what I've been doing, tracing the line wherever it leads. That's not an answer. He exhaled. You believe you're doing right. You probably are. But this is bigger than us. She turned toward the wall where a corkboard spread across the plaster maps. Photos, red pins marking cities. Strings linked names to museums and buyers. You've been at this longer than you told me. I started with one name from Voss's letters, then another. Cross-referenced missing inventories. Some pieces on your list disappeared in the 40s. If they're real, they're not just art, they're evidence. Of what? Complicity, theft, maybe worse. You waited until now to tell me I wanted proof. I thought we had time. I didn't expect the town to turn. Her coat clung damp to her shoulders. Do you trust me? He paused. I trust the truth. Something in her went quiet. No anger, no shock. Just the steady awareness she'd be facing this alone. Rain hit harder against the roof. He offered tea. She refused. When she turned to go, he caught her sleeve. Be careful tonight. She nodded and stepped out. Rain soaked her shoes before she reached the truck. She sat behind the wheel, letting the wipers find their rhythm. June's drawing lay in the glove box, the hotel lit yellow against a dark sky. She smoothed the fold with her thumb, eyes unfocused. A branch swung in the mirror, startling her. She locked the doors, turned the key. The road shimmered with runoff as she drove. One hand on the wheel, the other over the envelope beneath her coat, the last page of Voss's letter. There was no comfort left, only clarity. And that would have to be enough. Mara sat at her desk, fingers tight around the phone. The Voss letter lay beside her, creased, smudged, intact. She'd read it too many times, but her eyes always caught the last line, Ilse Voss Goldman, only surviving kin. She opened the photo on her phone, the ink sharp in digital form. Then she dialed the number Daniel had given her for the Holocaust Museum's Provenance Division. A woman answered on the second ring, calm and steady. Mara began explaining who she was, where she lived, but when she mentioned the name Leonard Voss, the woman stopped her gently. Do you have documentation? Yes, Mara replied. Photos of the letter, the room, the collection? Some items have catalog numbers. Send them directly to this email. Use the subject line, urgent. We'll begin verification immediately. Mara typed the email while still on the call. Attached every image paintings, serial codes, the floor plan, even the sealed room as she first found it. The files uploaded slowly progressed, bar crawling, as the signal blinked in and out. The call dropped once, but the woman called back right away. We take this very seriously, she said. If these works are authentic, federal representatives will be dispatched within days, possibly sooner. Will they protect the hotel, Mara asked. There was a pause. We'll do what we can to inform local authorities, but you should be cautious. News of this kind travels fast. She thanked her and hung up. Her hands didn't shake as much now. Around midday, gravel crunched in the driveway. From the second-floor window, she recognized Elliot's car, even before he stepped out. He marched toward the front entrance, jaw-tight umbrella, snapping in the wind. The first bang on the door rattled the hinges. Mara Ellis, he shouted, you need to hand over what you found. If you cooperate, we can talk terms. But once the state gets involved, it'll be out of your hands. She remained still, watching from the hallway. June stood behind her, clinging to the hem of her shirt. Don't open it, her daughter whispered. Mara's voice was steady. I won't. Elliot knocked again, this time less forcefully, more deliberate. They'll paint you as a thief, he warned. But if you give it to me now, I can frame it as a misstep, a misunderstanding. She stepped toward the door but didn't unlock it. Her words passed cleanly through the wood. They're already coming, Elliot. You won't be first in line anymore. Silence followed, then footsteps retreating across the porch tires, cutting through wet pavement, and nothing else, just wine pressing against the walls. Mara kept a hand on the knob before finally turning back to guide June upstairs. By evening, the rain returned heavier. Water drummed along the gutters, counting itself out in slow beats. Damp paper clung to her sleeves as she moved through the office, checking locks, scanning each document again. On the desk lay the printed email, her name in the sent from line, the files attached already gone. She sat on the floor with her back to the wall. The room felt different now. Not hostile, only waiting. In the corner, a painting leaned against its crate, still sealed beneath glass. The signature beneath was blurred, almost gone. She watched it until thunder rolled far away and faded. June slept with a book open across her chest. A flashlight had rolled off the bed, its faint beam trembling across the wall. Mara stayed where she was, arms around her knees, listening to her heartbeat, stubborn and even into the rain, soaking deeper into the earth. By the time she tied her boots, tires ground over the gravel drive. 2 black sedans stopped in front, followed by a van marked with the museum's logo. The sky hung dull but dry. Jacket June, she called. At the door waited a woman with cropped silver hair and a badge clipped to her blazer. 2 federal officers stood behind her, hands folded. Mara Ellis, the woman asked. Yes, I'm Dr. Elaine Porter, Holocaust Museum, Provenance Research. May we come in? Mara nodded and stepped aside. They entered quietly. Mara led the group upstairs through the narrow hall to the locked floor. June followed, clutching her rolled drawing. At the penthouse door, Mara paused, unhooked the padlock, and let the chain fall into her palm. Inside, everything stayed as she'd left it. Frames lined against the walls, papers neatly stacked. The federal officers moved through the room in silence, noting every detail. Dr. Porter checked the crates and canvases, the stamps, the ledger on the desk. You've done more than you know, she said. Footsteps sounded on the stairs. Elliot appeared in the hall with a local officer. You can't do this, he barked. They've got no jurisdiction. An agent stepped forward, unfolded a document. Mr. Graves, you're under investigation for obstruction and intimidation linked to provenance theft. He didn't resist. The officers guided him out, his protests dissolving to mutters. Doctor, Porter turned back to Mara. We'll secure the works and move them to our facility. What you found close is something we thought never would. Mara nodded. Words felt useless. June came up beside her and held out her drawing. This is our hotel. Dr. Porter crouched. It's beautiful. It will be June, said, tucking it away again. When the vans were loaded, the room grew still. The paintings remained where they'd first been found. No gold, no grandeur, only quiet, scarred beauty wrapped in dust. Sunlight brushed one frame. Mara exhaled steady but drained. The tape over the front door had started to curl. Mara stepped over at a box of tools in one hand, a rag in the other. June followed sketchbook pressed to her chest. They'd been allowed back after the federal team cleared out. The upper floors were sealed, the town quiet again. Reporters gone. Elliot gone. No more knocks in the night. The office still smelled faintly of damp wood and paper. Mara drew the curtains open. Daylight slipped in, not much but enough. The air felt lighter now. Less watched. The wall behind the desk bore a pale stain where the word thief had once screamed in red. She'd scrubbed it twice already. This morning she tried again, this time with hot water and baking soda. Her arm moved steadily. She wasn't rushing. June sat on the floor coloring. Her new picture showed the hotel lit from within, people scattered around it, some. On the steps, others holding balloons. A tiny version of Mara stood in the middle, tool belt slung over her shoulder. "I want to draw people checking in," June said, lifting the page. "And flowers on the sills." Mara smiled, not just with her mouth. Something settled behind her ribs. Something she hadn't felt in a long while, ease maybe. She knelt beside June, brushed a curl from her daughter's forehead. "I think that sounds perfect." Later she sorted through the desk drawers. The letter from Dr. Porter lay on top, a formal note of thanks along with a message from a family in Vienna. The handwriting was shaky but precise, the words kind. She didn't reread it, just filed it with the ledger and other papers from the penthouse. From the bottom drawer she took out an old photo, her younger self at Dobbin's mechanical arms, greasy to the elbows, laughing at something off frame. She studied it a moment, then set it down. Two women passed the gate outside carrying a pot of yellow lilies tied with white ribbon. They placed it by the post, adjusted the bow, and left without looking up. Mara watched until they turned the corner. That afternoon, Daniel stopped by. "You should be resting," he said, handing her a folded newspaper. A page was already marked. A short article confirmed the Ashbourne paintings matched works lost during the war. A French family had written to thank her for closure, for effort. "They'd like your contact," he said. "Only if you want." She folded the paper. "I wouldn't know what to say. You don't have to. They just want to know someone tried." June was drawing again on the floor, adding a spotted dog with a crooked tail. Mara watched her a moment. "You think people will still come," some Daniel said. "Curious ones. A few grateful." He left soon after. The door closed softly behind him. June's laugh carried faintly from down the hall. The floor creaked above, but Mara no longer tensed. The quiet was just quiet now. She poured a glass of water, set it on the sill, and picked up June's sketch pad. The hotel filled the page, tilted alive, every window bright. Warm autumn air stirred with the smell of paper and dust. Elliot sat near the front shoulders, slumped, suit rumpled. The man beside him said nothing. At the podium, the mayor read the findings. Tampering, abuse of authority, obstruction. No uproar, only the steady sound of words landing one by one. Elliot didn't react. His hands locked together until the knuckles blanched. Mara sat by the aisle. June swung her legs, feet too short to touch the floor. A councilwoman leaned over and whispered, "They'd like you to speak if you're willing." She didn't rise right away. Her heart thudded once, but not from fear. She stood, walked to the microphone, and blinked once as everyone turned toward her. "I didn't write anything," she said. "I thought I should. But I kept crossing things out." The room stayed still. "I used to think if I worked hard enough, things would settle down. That if I didn't stir the water, it wouldn't ripple. But sometimes what we call calm is just someone else keeping us quiet." A long pause followed. Then a woman near the back clapped once, then another. Soon the hall filled with the sound of hands meeting, not loud, not raucous, but steady. Some people stood. Mara nodded once, then stepped back. June beamed at her when she sat down. After the meeting, people milled around. Some offered handshakes, others left quickly. Dr. Elaine Porter waited near the door. Her coat looked heavy for the weather, but her smile was light. "We'd like to formally invite you to collaborate," she said, holding out an envelope. "There's interest in preserving part of the hotel. Educational programming, historical outreach. Something lasting." Mara took it but didn't open it yet. "That place barely stood on its own a few months ago," she said. Sometimes the right story holds it up better than Brick Lane replied. That made Mara laugh a little. She folded the envelope once and tucked it into her coat pocket. I'll read it. Thank you. They didn't linger. June was already by the exit, hopping from one foot to the other like the floor might disappear if she stood still. June begged for the long way home past the old bookstore and the dry fountain. Mara agreed. Her legs wanted the walk. June ran ahead chasing a leaf that spun once before catching on a grate. At the corner, the bakery displayed a new sign. Apple turnovers, fresh daily. The woman behind the counter noticed her, gave a brief smile, then went back to work. Nothing dramatic, just a town settling back into itself. Near the last block, June tugged her hand. Can we make hot chocolate later? The kind with the little marshmallows. Yeah, Mara said. We've got some left. The gate creaked as they passed through. Someone had tied a soft blue ribbon to the post. Mara turned the key and stepped into quiet. No footsteps overhead, no envelopes, no threats. She dropped her keys in the bowl and followed June down the hall, thinking she could fix the radiator tomorrow. Not urgent, just something worth doing. 6 months later, the building no longer drew stares. Curtains hung open again, and the sign above the door read Clean and New Grand Ashbourne Community Center. Mara arrived early most mornings, unlocked the door, checked deliveries, made sure the elevator still worked. The marble floor gleamed. The main hall hummed with steady sound, now chairs scraping a kettle whistling somewhere in back. 2 retirees played checkers near the shelves. A woman knitted beside them, nodding along to their half-finished stories. Children chased one another through the side hall, ignoring the no-running sign as always. Daniel handled the funding through the Mercer Foundation. She ran the day-to-day schedules, supplies, small crises. Once a week, he came by with printouts and notes scrawled on napkins. June was taller now. She spent afternoons helping hang artwork in the East Wing drawings, old photos, bits of the town's history. Today, she helped her classmates raise a banner over the stairwell Ashbourne town of second chances. The penthouse remained mostly unchanged. Glass cases sealed, documents in place. Visitors came in small groups reading quietly. A plaque near the desk read, "Sometimes keeping something is a way to make amends." It wasn't her phrase, but she let it stand. From the hall came the uneven notes of a piano. June sat beside Mrs. Adeline, learning the keys. The older woman hummed along, nodding whenever the melody landed right. Mara paused by the door listening. The music wasn't perfect, but it filled the space just enough. Mara moved through the hall, straightening chairs and answering small questions, a broken copier, a poetry night reservation. Both went on her list. Near the chandelier, the glass caught faint light. Cleaned months ago, it still gave off a quiet shimmer, holding brightness without demanding notice. Coffee in hand, she sat on the front steps. The mug was warm, though left too long on the desk earlier. It rested by her knee as the street moved steadily past people with shopping bags. A stroller stopping for a wave, the florist propping her door with a brick, while petals scattered along the walk. No triumph in the moment, only steadiness. From within the building came the sound of doors shifting, voices crossing. June called for more tape. Laughter followed. Mara leaned back against the rail, watching color spread over the pavement. The sky deepened toward peach edges, paling into evening. Warmth lingered in the air, touched with the start of cooler days. 2 students from the job class passed on their way out, nodding thanks. One had arrived months ago, barely speaking. Now he helped others with their forms. The last sip of coffee had cooled, but it was enough. Fingers traced the rim before setting the cup aside. There was still cleaning a printer that needed ink, a backpack forgotten. In the hall, small things, weighting none of them heavy. She stood across the threshold and let the door fall closed behind her. Ashbourne never needed a hero, just someone who stayed when it was easier to run. Mara didn't rebuild the town with grand speeches or perfect choices. She stayed through the fear, the noise, the silence. And slowly, that was enough. If you're carrying something that once broke you, maybe it's not about fixing it perfectly. Maybe it's about showing up anyway until the space around you begins to shift. Let that be the spirit you carry into the rest of your day.